Some films hit different when you know what it costs to make them. Baby Boy is one of those films. Raw, uncomfortable, and more personal than audiences ever realized. These are 12 revelations about how this movie got made, who almost didn't make it, and what was sacrificed along the way. Stick around for the bonus at the end. Almost nobody talks about it, and it reframes everything you thought you knew about why this film even exists. So speed up with me, because the list starts now. Number 1. Tupac was written into this role before there was a finished script. There was a sidewalk conversation on Crenshaw Boulevard. John Singleton walked directly up to Tupac Shakur mid-music video shoot in 1996, right in the middle of the To Live and Die in LA video, and said 5 words that were equal parts pitch and promise. I wrote a movie for you. This wasn't a cold approach. They'd worked together on Poetic Justice in 1993, and Singleton had seen up close what Tupac could do on camera. The charisma was undeniable. The emotional availability was real. He pitched Baby Boy as Tupac's own story. Both men raised by single mothers, both shaped by that specific South Central experience. He looked Tupac in the eyes and said he had the movie that was going to get him an Oscar nomination. They set a lunch. They were going to lock in the details. Within a week, Tupac was shot 4 times in a drive-by in Las Vegas. He died 6 days later, September 13th, 1996. Singleton was devastated. He shelved the script completely. Couldn't look at it. It sat in a drawer for 5 years. Then, Singleton met Tyrese Gibson. His first impression, the cat was a movie star who just hadn't done a movie yet. Same laugh, same energy, same realness. He cast him, and in the final film, hanging right over Jodie's bed, unmissable, impossible to ignore, is a massive Tupac poster. Not set decoration chosen by a prop department, a deliberate tribute placed there by Singleton himself, as a permanent reminder of what this film was always supposed to be and who it was always supposed to belong to. Number 2. Ice Cube said no and changed everything. Rodney wasn't written for Snoop Dogg. The role, the menacing ex-con who moves into Juanita's apartment and becomes the terrifying antagonist to Jodie's arrested development, was written specifically for Ice Cube. Singleton had directed Cube on Boys and the Hood in 1991 and Higher Learning in 1995. He knew exactly how Ice Cube projected controlled menace without raising his voice. Perfect for Rodney. Ice Cube passed. No explanation on the record, just a no. Singleton turned to Snoop Dogg. Critics were skeptical, said Snoop didn't have the dramatic range, couldn't sustain real threat. The New York Times disagreed, called his performance sly, menacing, and disarmingly funny. Snoop plays Rodney like a man who has never been in a hurry because he's always been the most dangerous person in the room. The scene where Jodie's son builds a pillow fort and Rodney walks in, looks at it, and calmly destroys it, that became an internet meme, one of the most quoted moments in the entire film. And Snoop delivered it with total stillness. No anger, no theatrics, just a man asserting dominance so naturally it barely registers as a threat until it's already done. It only exists because Ice Cube said no. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 3, Tyrese turned down the role. Multiple times, Tyrese Gibson said no. Not once, multiple times. He was in the middle of a music career that was actually working. His debut album went platinum in 1998. Grammy nomination for Sweet Lady. His second album, 2000 Watts, dropped in May 2001, right before Baby Boy hit theaters. Music was the plan. Why risk it on acting? Singleton kept circling back. Eventually, he found the argument that worked. He compared Tyrese to Tupac, said he had the same energy, the same realness, the same presence that couldn't be manufactured. Tyrese finally said yes. Baby Boy became his acting debut, not a small part, not a cameo, but a full lead role in a major studio film with 0 professional acting experience behind him. He pulled it off. Then, the moment filming wrapped, he told interviewers he was done. One movie as a favor to Singleton, and he was going back to music and staying there. We'll come back to how that turned out, because it did not go as planned at all, and the pivot he was forced to make would end up defining the next 2 decades of his career in ways he genuinely didn't see coming. Number 4, Tyrese was discovered on a bus in Watts. The chain of events that led Tyrese Gibson to Baby Boy started with a bus ride in Watts, South Central Los Angeles. He wasn't pursuing entertainment, no auditions, no industry connections, just a kid with a voice and a high school music teacher who paid attention. That teacher told him to audition for a Coca-Cola commercial. Tyrese almost missed the audition, showed up late. They asked him to sing on the spot, no preparation. He performed Stevie Wonder's Ribbon in the Sky, right there in the room. Raw talent, no safety net. The Coca-Cola executives signed him immediately. The 1994 Always Coca-Cola commercial aired nationally and made him recognizable overnight. That one commercial opened every subsequent door. Modeling deals with Guess and Tommy Hilfiger, a record deal with RCA for $2.5 million, an MTV hosting gig, a platinum debut album, and eventually a director named Singleton who couldn't stop seeing a movie star and a musician who kept insisting he wasn't interested. All of it traces back to a music teacher who told a kid on a bus to take a shot. Number 5. Tyrese still doesn't like Ving Rhames. This isn't an old quote softened by time. In 2024, 23 years after filming, Tyrese went on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast. The hosts mentioned Baby Boy. His response? I was not acting in Baby Boy. That man Ving Rhames definitely triggered me. I don't like him to this day. No walking it back. Genuine, ongoing resentment. To understand what happened, you have to understand where Tyrese came from. He grew up in Watts watching his mother navigate relationships with different men, some decent, some not. When Ving Rhames showed up playing Melvin, the ex-con boyfriend stepping into a father figure role, something broke loose. Every scene where Melvin tried to guide Jody toward becoming a man, Tyrese wasn't performing the reaction. He was having it. All of his unresolved childhood trauma came flooding back in real time, on camera. Ving Rhames did nothing wrong. He played the role exactly as written, but he played it too well. And that specific brand of too well left a wound that's still open in 2024. Singleton wanted authentic performances. He got one that went deeper than he probably anticipated, and the cost of that authenticity was a real relationship that still hasn't recovered. Number 6. Singleton cast his whole family in the film Baby Boy was personal for Singleton beyond the script and the themes. He put his actual family in it. He appears himself, uncredited, as a bootlegger trying to sell pirated DVDs to Jody and Sweet Pea. Blink and you'll miss it, but he's there in his own film. His mother, Sheila Ward, plays a mourner in Jody's funeral dream sequence. The scene where Jody imagines his own death. That's Singleton's actual mother in the crowd. His daughter, Cleopatra, plays Lil Nut, Jody's daughter with Peanut, the little girl at the very start of the film. His son, Messiah, appears as a young boy in another scene. 4 family members woven into the fabric of the story. Singleton was unapologetic about it. This wasn't a Hollywood production that happened to be set in South Central. It was South Central. His community, his history, his world, with a studio budget behind it. Having his family inside it wasn't a gimmick. It was a statement about who owned this story and where it actually came from. No outside interpretation, no approximation. Just the real thing put on screen by the people it actually belonged to. Number 7. A.J. Johnson lived in South Central for 2 weeks. A.J. Johnson played Juanita, Jody's mother, strong and street smart and completely out of patience with her adult son's refusal to grow up. The performance feels completely lived in, and that's not an accident. Johnson moved to South Central Los Angeles for 2 full weeks before filming started. Full immersion, no shortcuts. Singleton helped her connect with people in the neighborhood, but she didn't treat this as a guided tour. She rode the buses, spent time at local malls, talked to women in the community, observed how they moved, and carried themselves under pressure. She even got her nose pierced as part of the transformation, a visible commitment to closing the distance between herself and the character. The result is a performance where you don't feel like you're watching an actress. You feel like you're watching a woman who has been dealing with Jody's nonsense for 20 years and has genuinely, finally run out of road. 2 weeks in South Central, no shortcuts, no approximations. Just genuine preparation for a role that required someone to show up as a real person, not a character, and Johnson delivered exactly that. Number 8. Taraji P. Henson's script mirrored her own life before Baby Boy. Taraji P. Henson had guest spots on Sister Sister, Smart Guy, ER, Solid Work, Nothing That Broke Through. Then Singleton visited her acting class. Every other actor swarmed him afterward. Taraji held back deliberately. She wanted him to remember her work. not her desperation. The strategy worked. When casting began, Singleton told his director to find fresh faces, and when Kim Harden brought Taraji in, he remembered, the one who didn't rush me. The chemistry read with Tyrese was electric. The people in the room knew immediately this was Yvette. Years later, Taraji revealed why the performance hit so hard. She told a podcast that reading the script gave her goosebumps. She had to put it down because it was literally the blueprint of her relationship with her baby's father. She wasn't drawing on craft. She was drawing on her own life. The role was therapy, painful and real. It launched her career and created a problem at the same time. People thought Singleton had pulled her off the street, thought there was no acting happening. It took years of subsequent work to shake that perception. The role was so convincing it worked against her, until it didn't. Hollywood eventually caught up with an Oscar nomination for The Curious Case of Benjamin Button in 2009, and then Empire in 2015. But the foundation was laid right here, in a film where she wasn't acting so much as excavating. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next with strange behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. Number 9. Ving Rhames says the studio gutted the film. Ving Rhames walked away from Baby Boy with a specific frustration. He told people the original script had significantly more substance, more depth, more moral complexity, more willingness to sit inside difficult territory. The studio applied pressure. Singleton was pushed towards something more commercially accessible. Scenes were cut. Character arcs were simplified. According to Rhames, what audiences saw was a diluted version of what was actually written. For Rhames, this was personal. He had signed on to play Melvin with the understanding that the character had a complete internal life, a history and backstory that justified everything he did on screen. The theatrical cut couldn't fully support that once the editing decisions were made. Good performance, not what he signed up for. This is the oldest tension in American cinema. The director who wants to challenge the audience versus the studio that wants to fill seats. Singleton had a specific vision. The studio had a budget to recoup. The audience got the middle ground. And according to the man who played one of its central characters, it was supposed to hit significantly harder. Singleton never publicly responded to that characterization, but the fact that Rhames felt strongly enough to say it on the record says something about what was left on the cutting room floor. Number 10. Baby Boy was Singleton's last screenplay. John Singleton directed 6 more films after Baby Boy: Shaft, Too Fast, Too Furious, Four Brothers, Abduction. He kept showing up and kept making films, but he never wrote another feature-length screenplay. Baby Boy was the last time he sat down alone and built an entire story from scratch, his final writing credit. He was specific about what he was going for. He wanted it to be as soulful as a Marvin Gaye record, not necessarily a technical masterpiece, just something that stayed with you the way music does. He poured in everything: his community, his observations of South Central, the themes of black male responsibility, absent fathers, single mothers, arrested development, no co-writers, no script doctors, just Singleton. In April 2019, Singleton suffered a massive stroke and died at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was 51 years old. Baby Boy is the last complete creative vision he put on paper. Every line of dialogue, every scene, every difficult moment, all of it came from him. That context changes the weight of the whole film. Baby Boy is the last time John Singleton had full authorial control over every word on screen, and that specificity, that willingness to let characters be genuinely flawed, hits differently knowing it. Number 11. Tyrese swore off acting, then did the opposite. The moment filming wrapped, Tyrese told interviewers he was done, finished. One film as a favor to Singleton, and that was the full extent of his Hollywood experiment. He had a music career, his second album had just dropped, and acting was never going to be a serious pursuit. He meant every word of it. Then Baby Boy opened and made $29 million. People weren't just noticing the movie, they were noticing Tyrese. Not as a singer, as an actor. Offers started coming in. Singleton called again with Too Fast, Too Furious. Tyrese said yes. Then Michael Bay called with Transformers. Spielberg as executive producer. Tyrese said yes again. He became Roman Pierce. He became Sergeant Robert Epps. He became a franchise actor in 2 of the biggest film series ever made. Everything he said, he didn't want. Every door he claimed he was closing, he walked through all of them. One film he tried to avoid making launched one of the most commercially successful acting careers of his generation. And none of it would have happened if Singleton had accepted the first quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations. And tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. Number 12. The film made $647,000 outside America. Total Baby Boy opened July 4th weekend 2001. Hit number 5 at the domestic box office. Made $8.6 million opening weekend. $28.7 million total domestic against a $16 million budget. Profitable. Roger Ebert gave it 3.5 stars. 72% on Rotten Tomatoes. By most standards, a successful film. And then here's the number that makes you read it twice. The entire international gross, every country outside the United States combined, was $647,000. Not per territory, total. The film made 98% of its worldwide gross domestically. Outside America, the audience essentially did not exist. This isn't a distribution failure. It's a story about cultural specificity. The themes: Black male responsibility in South Central Los Angeles, the experience of growing up fatherless in that specific neighborhood, the unspoken codes of that specific community resonated with enormous power to domestic audiences. To international audiences, that context simply didn't translate. Baby Boy was built for one audience with precision and honesty, and that audience showed up. It was a film that knew exactly who it was speaking to and made no apology for speaking only to them. And that kind of precision, that refusal to dilute itself for a broader market, is exactly why it still holds up. Everyone else was never really the point. Almost at the end, and the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. Bonus. The whole film is an act of grief for Tupac. Here's what nobody talks about. Baby Boy is not just a movie about a young man struggling to grow up. It is a film that exists, in its entirety, as an act of grief. John Singleton didn't shelve this script for 5 years because he ran out of funding. He shelved it because the person the story was written for was murdered before he ever got to read the finished pages. Tupac Shakur never played Jody, never gave that performance, never got the Oscar conversation Singleton had promised him on a Crenshaw sidewalk. When Singleton finally returned to the project, the Tupac poster over Jody's bed was not casual set decoration. It was the whole point stated plainly on screen. The story of a young black man raised without a father, caught between who he is and who he needs to become. That was Tupac's story. Not metaphorically, Singleton wrote it specifically for him because he saw Tupac's actual life in it. And when you see the film through that lens, everything takes on different weight. Tyrese reliving his childhood trauma through the role. Taraji reading her own relationship on the page. A.J. Johnson moving to South Central because a story this personal required that level of preparation. Singleton putting his own mother in the funeral scene, his own children in the background. The whole film is saturated with real lives and real losses because Singleton was making something in memory of a specific person who should have been at the center of it. Baby Boy isn't just John Singleton's last screenplay. It's a love letter to Tupac Shakur, the most personal film he ever made, dedicated entirely to someone who never got to see it. And those were 12 strange facts about Baby Boy. This film wasn't built to be safe or polished or universally palatable. It was pulled from real lives, real grief, and the specific texture of South Central Los Angeles. That's why it still sparks debate and discomfort more than 2 decades later. Singleton didn't chase perfection, he chased truth, and everyone involved paid some price for that. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which fact hit you the hardest. And don't forget to suggest another movie that deserves this kind of deep dive. See you in the next video.